Welcome to the Section 111 podcast with your host, TJ Shoemaker.
And welcome to episode 6 of the Section 111 podcast. I'm your host, TJ Shoemaker, and I'll be joined today by my brother, Tyler Shoemaker. Tyler, how you doing?
Hey, good. It's good to be back on the pod and talking some week 2 betting. I know we had a good week 1, so I hope all the listeners cashed in on that, and I'm looking forward to doing week 2.
Absolutely. Last week 1, you went total 5-2 on all your top 3 plays plus your leans. So I hope that everybody followed and cashed in on those, and we hope to help you guys make some money this weekend also. But Tyler, let's begin by talking about your top 3 picks for this week, and then any other notable games that you want to add to that.
Sure. Yeah. So this week we'll start with Nevada getting 24.5 on the road at Oregon. Oregon coming off that tough loss to Auburn, where they had control of the game for 3 quarters or 3.5 quarters and lost it there at the end on a game-winning drive by Bo Nix. But my numbers really like Nevada in this spot. It's partially a play against Oregon, who, like I said, is coming off such a tough emotional loss. This is kind of a letdown spot for them. And then just from an analytical standpoint, my numbers have that projected at about Oregon by 12.5. So a ton of value there as far as my projections go, and 100% of the models were in agreement on that. And last week, just a quick stat to let people know about my system. Last week, on plays that all 10 computer models were in agreement on, they went 7-2 last week. So I feel really, really comfortable with this pick. Just a couple little nuggets on that. Over the last 3 years, Oregon is only 3-6 against the spread in the first month of the season, and Nevada is 2-0 as an underdog of 21 to 28 points over the last 3 years. So just a couple of trends, on top of the numbers that really make me feel good about this game.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd like to add to that, saying that Nevada is actually 6-2 against the spread in their last 8 games, and Oregon is just 5-10 against the spread in their last 10. And also Oregon is 13-28 against the spread in their last 41 games. So that's kind of eye-popping right there. And like you mentioned earlier, Oregon coming off a heartbreaking loss, and Nevada is kind of the opposite, coming off a big-time win against Purdue, comeback victory. So, I really like Nevada here too, and let's hope that we can hit it.
Yeah, and I will say I've seen some spots have this line going down, which tells me that the sharp money is on our side and is going to push that line down. So I would definitely jump on that as early as possible. But like I said, my numbers have it at about 12.5. So even if you don't get the 24.5 that I got, as long as you get that within a point or two, I would still feel really good about it.
All right. What do you have next up on the slate?
Next up, I have the Mountaineers of West Virginia covering the 14-point spread against Missouri. My numbers, again, all 10 computer models in agreement, and have that projected out at a 3-point Missouri win. So, again, a ton of line value there. And a couple little trends on that. Missouri is just 2-6 against the spread in the first month of the season over the last 3 years, while West Virginia is 3-1 against the spread the first 2 weeks of the season the last 3 years. So really, everything points to West Virginia getting this cover. And honestly, with the way Missouri looked last week, it wouldn't surprise me if West Virginia actually wins outright.
Well, yeah. West Virginia is actually 4-2 against the spread in their last 6 games in week 2. So that's a good little tidbit there. And one thing I did find about Missouri is that they are 8-2 against the spread in their last 10 games at home. But you also have to look at, this is not the same Missouri team that you've seen for the past couple of years. Drew Lock moves on. They've lost several pieces on a good defensive team. and they're really not the same. I mean, neither is West Virginia, but I do like the line value that you mentioned, and I'm going to agree with you that West Virginia is a good play for week 2.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, and that's a good point. Drew Lock moves on, so and the same with West Virginia, Will Greer. So I mean, some of the trends, take them for what they're worth, and like I mentioned on the last pod, the trends, I just mentioned those just as just kind of a cherry on top. That those don't make or break where I'm putting my money. That's strictly analytic based. So I feel really good about West Virginia in this spot. And then my third pick. The big game that everyone is excited about this weekend, Texas LSU. I'm going to go with Texas plus 6.5. I'm really hoping to get this at plus 7, and get the full touchdown. But if it stays at 6.5, I still feel comfortable there. My numbers have that. Have LSU by about 2.5. So you're still getting some line value there. And again, all 10 computer models in agreement that Texas gets to cover. So I feel really comfortable there. And, one trend that I'm sure that a lot of people have heard at this point, if you follow any sharp betting podcasts or, digital publications, Texas 8-2 against the spread as an underdog over the last 3 years. And LSU just 4-7 against the spread in non-conference over the last 3 years. And also LSU is only 4-5 against the spread the first month of the season over the last 3. So they haven't been good early in the season against the spread. And what that tells you is that the general public sees the brand of LSU, the first month of the season without seeing what kind of team they actually have on the field. And they just go lay money because it's LSU, and that inflates the lines quite a bit. So I'm looking to take the value in Texas here.
Yeah, Texas is 4-2 against the spread in their last 6 games, and they are 10-2-1 against the spread in their last 13 games when they are the underdog. So I like Texas here. I think that LSU will win the game, but like you said, I'd say 2.5 points to a field goal is probably about right. So, but I like Texas to cover as well. All right. What other games do you have on your list there?
Just a couple more strong leans that I really like that we can just touch on. I like Liberty getting 13.5 points at Louisiana Lafayette. All 10 computer models in agreement. My projections have that at about 9.5, so you're getting about 4 points of line value there. So I really like that one. And another one is Louisiana Monroe at Florida State, getting 21 points on the road. Florida State, coming off that loss to Boise State last week. That program is just a disaster right now. They started the finger pointing at each other 10 minutes after the game was over. So this is a strong play against Florida State. So I'm definitely gonna put some money on Louisiana Monroe to cover that 3 touchdown spread.
Yeah, Florida State is actually 0-1 when showing up to the games not hydrated. So
yeah, exactly. This is a bet against their hydration for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of the talk going around Tallahassee right now is that the team wasn't hydrated enough for the game against Boise State, and that's why they lost. So let's hope that they hire Bobby Boucher or something to help them out.
Yeah.
All right. What other games you got?
So we'll touch on some of the big time matchups from this weekend. Some of the big names. Let's see. Let's go to Texas A&M going to Clemson right here in my backyard. I was actually at the Clemson Georgia Tech game last week. Although Clemson didn't come out and look very impressive last week, in my opinion, even though they covered the 37-point spread. I have a strong lean on Clemson here. That spread is 17.5. My numbers have it at about 21. 6 of the 10 computer models agree. So again, it's not a unanimous pick. So it's not a top play for me, but it is a strong lean. And that is because almost 80% of the public right now is on Texas A&M. And Clemson tends to show up in these big games. So I can't fade them in this spot. If I was going to play it, I would definitely have a strong lean on Clemson.
Yeah, this is a tricky game. I think that Texas A&M is a good team. Obviously, Clemson is a great team, and I would like to think that Texas A&M can play with them. But that number being that high, I feel like is kind of a trick. Clemson's 9-2 against the spread in their last 11, and 8-2 against the spread in their last 10 as a favorite. So it's hard to argue with those trends there. And especially with the computer models. I mean, 6 out of 10, like you said, is not unanimous, but that's enough to maybe even keep me away from the game completely, or I don't know, maybe throw one of those teams into some sort of teaser or something like that.
Yep.
But betting it straight up is definitely going to be tricky.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna hold off. If I can get Clemson under 17, if I can get them under the 2.5 touchdowns, I will probably throw a little bit on there. But for right now, it's just a lean for me. And then moving on, Ohio State is hosting Cincinnati, and Coach Luke Fickell makes his return to the shoe. As a Buckeye fan, this game has me a little nervous, and my numbers kind of back that up. My numbers have Ohio State by 15.5. That line right now is about 16.5. So it's the line is pretty accurate on that right now. So it's probably a stay away for me. If I were to play it, especially if that line gets above 17, I would have a slight lean towards Cincinnati. Just the style of football that they play. They want to run the ball, play good defense, and make it an ugly game. And I don't think it's going to be very high scoring enough for Ohio State to cover that big of a number. So it's probably a stay away, but it would be a slight lead for Cincinnati.
Yeah, Ohio State's just 3-8 against the spread in their last 11, but they are 5-0 against American Conference opponents in their last 5 games. So, take that for what you will, but I think that Cincinnati is a different type of American Conference team that Ohio State has seen in the last 5 times. So, Cincinnati is 4-2 against the spread in their last 6 Week 2 games, and they're 13-2 straight up in their last 15 games, which to me is indicative of being a really good team and either winning or playing teams really tight. So that kind of has me leaning towards Cincinnati.
Yep, exactly. And one thing with that game that I don't think my numbers can account for is just the motivational factor of Luke Fickell and also defensive coach. I'm sorry, his name escapes me. The linebackers coach for Cincinnati. I know Ohio State wanted him to come join Ryan Day's staff this offseason. He actually turned them down. So both of them played at Ohio State, and I know Luke Fickell's probably a little upset that he probably thought he was the guy in waiting to take over after Urban Meyer left. So I think he's going to want to come and really have his team ready to play. So again, probably a stay away, but a slight lean to Cincinnati.
Yeah, and also you got to think that there's probably a lot of players on Cincinnati's team that was turned down by Ohio State, and that's probably why they're at Cincinnati. But so that they're probably going to come out ready to play, at least play with them for a half or so, and maybe keep this thing close enough to cover the spread.
Exactly. And Marcus Freeman, I believe, is the name of the coach I was thinking of.
Oh, yeah, former linebacker for Ohio State.
Exactly. And then let's see. Some Friday night action, and this is, for our tri-state listeners. Marshall going to Boise State. This one's tricky because my numbers are pretty much in line with what the spread is right now, which is Boise State minus 12. But coming off that big win against Florida State, the public is all over them right now. Boise's getting, I think, close to 80% of the bets. In this spot, I think Marshall's 5-2 against the spread as an underdog over the last couple seasons. I would take a flyer on Marshall plus the 12 here. Again, not a top play for me, but if you want some action on Friday night, I would maybe throw a little bit on Marshall plus the 12.
Yeah, I don't really have any trends or numbers here to back that up, but I will say that Boise State is coming off that emotional win at Florida State, and it's a short week, so the game is on Friday. Granted, Marshall played on Saturday as well, but I think you got to factor the mental state of that team. Will they kind of ride that high out and take Marshall lightly? I think that's maybe a possibility. So I'm going to agree there. Marshall plus 12.
Okay. Are there any other games that you are personally curious about, or that listeners may want to lean on?
I do not have anything else.
Oh, what?
Unless you got,
Yeah, one
go ahead.
more. Michigan hosting Army. That I think will be an interesting game. Army looked terrible against Rice last week. Unfortunately, I had jumped the gun and put a little bit of money on Army, and they let me down sorely. But Michigan is laying 23 points in this spot, and given the style of both teams, particularly Army, and the way Michigan came out and looked against Middle Tennessee State, which was not good. I don't know that there's going to be enough points scored in this game for Michigan to cover a 23-point spread. So I would lean Army there. The only thing that kind of scares me off of Army is that they're getting, I think, 65% of the bets right now. So the public is kind of aware of that. So that makes me a little weary. So not a play, but a slight lean on Army to cover against Michigan.
Yeah, that game's tricky because everybody kind of expected to find something out again about Michigan last week, and that really didn't happen. You still are kind of wondering what's
Exactly.
Michigan like, what's their offense going to do. I mean, they scored 45, but that was on Middle Tennessee. So Army's kind of that slow, not slow pace, but they want to run the ball, run the clock, and try to play good defense. So I think I agree with you there. I think 22, 23, that's a pretty high number. So I don't know if Michigan can even get there to cover that.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, I agree. I think that's all of the major games. One thing I did want to point out, in the stat that I mentioned earlier, regarding my system and the two losses that I took against the spread last week, when my models were in alignment, those losses were Vanderbilt and Duke, which Duke was only down 14-3, I believe, at halftime, and Vanderbilt played Georgia tight and was covering the whole game until a fumble allowed a Georgia field goal late in that game for Georgia to get the cover. So I mean, both of those plays were right in my opinion. We came out on the wrong side, but I feel good about the logic behind the play and how the game's actually played out. So I'm very very confident in the system, and I hope everybody's following and making some money.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might have just taken kind of the sit back and wait approach, see how the system played out, and I know that I've had several people message me and stuff about week one and the numbers and how it all went and stuff, and I think that they're ready to jump on board and start cashing with us.
Well, I hope so. I know I did well last weekend. I increased my bankroll quite a bit, and I know several of my friends that tailed. They also were very appreciative of my information. So hopefully everybody has a good weekend, and we all make some money.
Yeah, definitely. I did want to get your opinion on a couple of things. One was, what was your biggest impression from week one, as far as like which team impressed you the most, and then which team was least impressive in your opinion?
Um, Most impressive, I would say. I mean, once Alabama got its guys in there, because they had some suspensions in the first half, but once those guys got in there, I mean, they were definitely on another level. So they looked really good offensively. I thought, from a player standpoint, I thought Travis Etienne from Clemson was just amazing. And like I said, I was there in person, so I mean, he was just amazing to see in person. But Clemson as a whole, I know they covered a huge spread, but they were not very impressive to me. And that's not. I still think they're the best team, top to bottom, in the country. But I was disappointed in what I saw live in person. So I'm anxious to see how they come out this week against Texas A&M. But um, but yeah, they were just disappointing, and I thought Alabama looked really good. I thought Ohio State looked really good in the first quarter until they kind of cooled the Jets and just the play calling kind of got vanilla and things like that, and Just kind of coasted after going up 28-0 after the first 6 minutes of the game, I think. Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma looked really good, but again, I think Oklahoma's getting a ton of praise nationally for beating a Houston team by 18 points, and that's not all that impressive to me. I mean, I thought they looked okay on offense, but it was still kind of the same story on defense. So I'm not gonna make any rash judgments until a couple of weeks down the road, until we have a bigger sample size. But those are my initial thoughts from week one for some of the top teams.
Yeah, that's kind of been my motto up to this point is don't jump to conclusions after week one. I mean, you saw that in the week 0 game with Florida and Miami. People kind of jumping to conclusions saying that Florida's not as good as what they are, that Miami's not very good. And then you kind of had to wait a week to see what everybody else was going to do. And I think some of that criticism has kind of scaled back a little bit as everybody sees that, okay, in week 1, things aren't going to go that smoothly, especially if you watch the Clemson game and watch Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he struggled heavily, and not only with bad decision-making, but even on his incompletions, he was overthrowing guys and just wasn't very accurate. So I don't think anything less of Trevor Lawrence after that performance. I think that he's still, one of the best quarterbacks right now, or probably the best quarterback right now, and will probably be a long-time NFL quarterback. And so yeah, I'm just not jumping to conclusions about any team. I think that there were teams that were more impressive than others, but overall, I'm going to kind of wait, give it a couple of weeks, and see exactly what each team has.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, and I agree with what you said about Lawrence. His throws, there was something with his timing. He was off by a split second on a lot of his throws. I mean, the both interceptions he threw were just terrible. But again, like you said, I don't think any less of him. I still think he's the best quarterback in the country, and I'm looking forward to seeing him turn it around. Probably starting this weekend as he goes out, lights Texas A&M up, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't think that he can afford to have another game like that against a team like Texas A&M, or they could be in trouble. But my most impressive team that I had was Wisconsin. They looked fantastic against South Florida. I know we don't really know how great South Florida is, but you do know that they have some athletes on both sides of the ball, and Wisconsin came out and beat them 49-0.
Yeah.
So I was impressed with them as a whole, and especially with Jonathan Taylor. Obviously, he kind of answered some questions that I had about him. I thought that he was just kind of one of those guys that is good because he gets 40 carries a game and has that benefit, but he actually only carried the ball, I think, 16 times and had 135 rushing yards with 2 touchdowns, and then he had 2 catches for 48 yards and 2 more touchdowns. So that was kind of good to see from him, and people had kind of questioned his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, and he displayed that. So I was very impressed with him and Wisconsin as a team.
Yeah, I agree with that, and him catching the ball out of the backfield, I think, is definitely the biggest improvement in his game from last year to this year, and that'll be huge for him as far as his NFL prospects go, because that's where the league is trending, is these backs that can catch it and run with it out of the backfield. So good for him for adding that to his game, and hopefully he has a bad game when they visit Columbus here in a month or two.
Yeah, and the team that I was kind of disappointed with this weekend was another Big Ten team, but Nebraska. They only beat South Alabama 35-21. They were 36-point favorites in the game, and there has been a lot of hype around Nebraska over the summer, leading into the season, and they were not very impressive at all. And I want to say Adrian Martinez struggled a little bit. I think he threw for, I want to say, like 180 yards, if that, against probably a porous defensive backfield of South Alabama. So I definitely want to see more from Nebraska, and I think that they better get it cleaned up before Ohio State comes to town here in a few weeks.
Yeah, definitely. And he looked more like Taylor Martinez than Adrian Martinez last week. Unfortunately, that
Team Magic.
Yeah, because of the line movement, That wasn't a pick that I was able to give out at the time that we recorded the pod, but that is a game that I jumped on, and actually it became a top play, and I had money on South Alabama to cover that number, and so that was a comfortable win for me. But yeah, Nebraska, because of all the preseason hype, that's a team that you can look to fade here from a betting perspective early in the season, because everyone just hears the hype and goes and lays their money on the name without the numbers to back it up, and a lot of these lines get inflated. So especially here early in the season, like I said, we'll definitely look to fade Nebraska a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. One last thing, I kind of wanted to just get your opinion on who's your, I don't want to say preseason because it's not preseason anymore, but who's your favorite to win the Heisman this year at this point after 1 week?
That's tough. I think just from a purely statistical standpoint, my I guess players of the week from last week would probably be Jalen Hurts and Travis Etienne. Some honorable mentions in there would be, like you said, Tua. I think Justin Fields had a good day. Jacob Eason had a good day, but the two performances that really stuck out to me were Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma and Travis Etienne of Clemson. And both of those, I mean, Travis Etienne averaged 17 yards a carry last week, which is just absurd. So,
Yeah.
For me personally, it would probably be those two right now at the top. I don't think the betting market really reflects that. The betting market still has Tua and Trevor Lawrence as favorites, and I think Jalen Hurts now is a co-favorite, but they have ETN like 10th as far as the odds go, so that there might be some value there.
Yeah, some other names to mention. You talked about it earlier with Alabama, but Jerry Jeudy had 10 catches for 137 yards. That's good for 13.1 yards per reception and a touchdown. And did you see the move that he put on that dude when he caught it kind of on a swing pass? He did an unnecessary spin kind of, and then just accelerated straight past the dude. And like as he ran past the dude just kind of like slapped his helmet like damn, he got me.
Yeah, he was on another level. I mean, the Duke, watching the Duke secondary try to run around with him was literally like watching a grown man at a 7th grade flag football game. I mean, it was insane.
Yeah, like I swear, if you go back and watch that video, like that Duke defensive back was just like Monica. But yeah, then Justin Fields had 5 total touchdowns. I was really impressed with him. I thought that he looked really good, especially in the first quarter, like you mentioned earlier. Ohio State looked good as a team. They kind of went vanilla. I think that could be they didn't want to show Cincinnati too much for this week, but who knows? But
yeah, I think so. And from what I've heard, because there were several times after that first quarter where it looked like they were running a read option, but he gave the ball to J.K. Dobbins when everyone thought he should have kept it. And it turns out that was kind of by design to just, minimize the amount of hits that he was taking, because he kind of got hit pretty hard a couple of times. So I think Ryan Day just wanted to kind of ease that, get out of there with a win. But I definitely would look for the full playbook to be on display this weekend. So I'm anxious to see what they look like. I'm withholding judgment on how good they are until I see them, this weekend.
Yeah, and kind of keeping it Buckeye related, Joe Burrow had 5 passing touchdowns and only 4 incompletions this past weekend. So I thought that was worthy of noting there.
Oh yeah, he's definitely a Buckeye for life, even though he is down in Baton Rouge now. But so we're Buckeye Nation still rooting for him. So I'm glad to see him doing well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, if you don't have anything else, I guess that's going to wrap us up.
All right. Well, again, good luck to everybody. I hope everybody follows the plays and we all cash out this weekend. If you have any particular games that you would like my lean on, feel free to hit me up on Twitter at BuckeyeTie23, and I'll be glad to give you that info.
All right. Well, brother, I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks.
All right, and a lot of good stuff there from my brother Tyler. I hope that you all followed us last week and cashed in with us. If not, be sure to hop on the train this week, and let's get this thing rolling and make some money. Thank you all for checking out this episode. I hope that you guys learned something. I hope that you gained some new perspective, And most importantly, I hope you all were entertained. But thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Section 111 podcast.